Okay, so today we're really going to get inside the head of Georges St-Pierre.
GSP, yeah, one of the absolute best in MMA ever.
No doubt. But we're not just talking about, the fights themselves, the wins, the titles. We're going deeper into the mental game that made him a champion.
Exactly. Everyone knows GSP was incredibly skilled, but it was his mindset, his approach to training even, that really set him apart.
And you might think, right, here's a guy who dominated the UFC, so his approach to training must have been super intense, like win at all costs, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
But that wasn't GSP. He actually saw that kind of mentality, that super aggressive approach to sparring as potentially harmful.
Harmful in the long run, he means.
Yeah, exactly. He believed in what he called play to learn.
Which is fascinating when you think about it, because it really aligns with what we know about learning and skill development in general, not just in fighting.
So you're saying there's a science to this playful approach?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you're not constantly under pressure to win, to be perfect, you're more free to experiment, to try new things, to actually refine your technique.
It's like if you're learning a new video game, you don't start on the hardest difficulty, right?
Exactly. You got to mess around a bit, get a feel for the controls, make some mistakes before you're ready for the real challenge.
And GSP took that same approach to his fighting.
He did, and it wasn't just about playful sparring. He used some pretty unconventional techniques, too, like frame data analysis, for example.
Okay, now that sounds pretty high-tech. Frame data analysis, what is that?
It sounds complicated, but it's actually pretty ingenious. Basically, GSP had someone on his team analyze his opponent's fights frame by frame.
Wow, like breaking down every single movement.
Every punch, every reaction, everything. They were looking for patterns, for any little tells that could give GSP an edge.
And did it work?
Take his fight against BJ Penn. Penn was known for his speed, lightning-fast reflexes, some of the fastest in the UFC at the time.
Right, Penn was incredible.
Through frame data analysis, GSP's team was able to see exactly how quickly Penn reacted to certain movements, certain attacks.
So instead of trying to match that speed, which, let's be honest, would have been almost impossible.
Exactly. GSP used that data to develop a strategy based on disrupting Penn's timing, using feints, misdirection, and it worked.
Wow. That's thinking ahead. And this was, way before data analysis became a thing in MMA.
Oh, yeah. GSP was ahead of the curve on that one.
Yeah.
It really shows how his mind worked, always looking for an edge, even if it meant using unconventional methods.
And then there's this other thing I found fascinating about his training. He insisted on sparring in 3-minute rounds.
Even when he was preparing for 5-round title fights.
Yeah, which seems counterintuitive, right? Wouldn't you want to train for the exact length of the fight?
You'd think so, but it all comes down to how our bodies use energy. See, those 3-minute bursts force GSP's body to become really efficient at generating power quickly and recovering quickly.
Interesting. So it's almost like he's training his body to work in those short, explosive bursts.
Exactly. It's about pushing your limits, but also about efficiency. And it seemed to work pretty well for him.
It's wild, all the lengths GSP would go to gain even the smallest advantage. But here's the thing that kind of blew my mind. This is a guy right at the very top of his game, world champion multiple times. You'd think he'd be supremely confident, no doubts whatsoever.
Yeah, like he'd be invincible mentally.
Exactly. But GSP actually talked a lot about, battling self-doubt.
Yeah.
Even at the peak of his career. It's kind of surprising,
It is interesting. But I think for GSP, that self-doubt was kind of intertwined with this, constant need to grow, to push himself.
Because it's like that doubt fueled him.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
He was never satisfied, never content to just rest on his laurels. And you see this going all the way back to his childhood. GSP was bullied pretty badly growing up.
Yeah, I'd heard that. Tough way to grow up.
Definitely not easy. But GSP actually credits those experiences, at least to some extent, with, shaping him, making him mentally tough. He even called it being scarred into growth, which I thought was interesting.
Scarred into growth. I've never heard that before, but I kind of get it. Like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right?
Exactly. Now, obviously, not everyone who goes through trauma comes out stronger. Trauma is serious stuff. But there are people like GSP who find a way to use those experiences to build resilience.
So for GSP, those tough times, that bullying, it kind of became the foundation for his mental game.
It's like it taught him how to face challenges head on, to confront his fears, push past his comfort zone. And that translated to the octagon, too. He never lost that hunger, that drive.
He even quotes his friend C.T. Fletcher, the bodybuilder.
Oh, yeah, C.T. Fletcher, a legend.
GSP said Fletcher told him, "The day you're satisfied is the day you need to find something else to do." It's kind of a hardcore thing to say, but I guess it makes sense.
It's about never becoming complacent. And you see this in a lot of high achievers, not just athletes. It's called the growth mindset. Always striving, always learning, always getting better.
And GSP definitely embodied that. Even as a champion, he never acted like he'd arrived, always looking for ways to improve.
Always evolving, which when you think about it, that's what makes him so fascinating. He's not just a fighter. He's like a case study in resilience and self-improvement.
And that actually leads us to another side of GSP, a side that might surprise some people. So we've talked about GSP's mindset, his training, but there's this whole other side to him that I find really interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
This guy, he's not just a fighter, he's a thinker, always asking these big, deep questions about life, the universe, everything.
He really does. Like his thoughts on artificial intelligence, for instance, he seems really drawn to that.
Yeah, and it's not just like a passing interest. I mean, he's had some pretty intense conversations with AI experts. Lex Fridman, for one.
Right, Lex Fridman. And it's interesting because GSP seems to share some of the same concerns that you hear from guys like Elon Musk, Sam Harris.
Yeah.
You know, these big names in tech and science.
Which is basically that AI could get so smart that it becomes a threat to humanity.
Well, it's more nuanced than that. It's not necessarily that AI will become evil or anything like that. It's more about the control problem, as it's called.
That control problem.
Yeah, basically, how do we ensure that these super intelligent machines, these AIs, that might be capable of thinking in ways we can't even comprehend, how do we ensure that their goals stay aligned with ours?
Okay, yeah, I get that. Because if they get too smart, too independent, how do we control them? How do we even know what they're thinking?
Exactly. It's a question that keeps a lot of people up at night, and not just in some, like, sci-fi way. These are real concerns about the future of humanity.
It's like, be careful what you wish for, right?
In a way, yeah. But it's not all doom and gloom. GSP is also really fascinated by the past, by ancient history. Specifically, a site in Turkey called Göbekli Tepe. Have you heard of it?
Vaguely. Isn't that the one with the really old carvings?
Yeah, and I mean really old. We're talking 12,000 years old, which predates what we thought we knew about, the origins of civilization.
So like rewriting history kind of stuff.
Exactly. And these aren't just simple carvings either. These are intricate, three-dimensional works of art. Really sophisticated stuff.
Which makes you wonder, what else is out there? What other secrets are we sitting on?
Right. And it's that sense of wonder, that curiosity, that I think really defines GSP. He's always looking for answers, always digging deeper. And it ties into another concern he has, which is our dependence on technology.
You mean like we're so reliant on our phones, our computers, all of it, that we'd be lost without it?
Well, it's more than that. He points to the pandemic, right? Like, that was just a small taste of how quickly things can fall apart, how fragile our interconnected world really is.
That's true. It was like the whole system just stopped.
Exactly. And it got me thinking about that book, Collapse, by Jared Diamond.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
He talks about how even the most advanced societies are vulnerable to things like environmental disasters, resource depletion, social unrest, all these factors that can contribute to collapse.
And GSP worries that we're headed down that same path.
Well, I wouldn't say he's pessimistic, but he does seem to think that we could learn a lot from history, from the mistakes of past civilizations.
It's like that saying, right? Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
Exactly. And I think for GSP, it's not just about remembering the past, but also about, actively engaging with it, asking the tough questions, and maybe, through that process, finding a better way forward.
That's a good point. Maybe we should all be asking those big questions a little more often. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive. Hope you enjoyed exploring the mind of Georges St-Pierre with us.